It's amazing, the questions never end. Gives us something to do in the evening. Dear Ajahn, can you please introduce the nuns to us? Who they are, where they have come from? I don't know. Who are you? Where are you from? I thought you knew. But, you know what's happening tomorrow night, Venables? You don't, they don't tell you what happens when you come here. Because usually on the last Friday of the retreat, because I can't stay away from Nolamara too long, because people are waiting for me to give talks there, and maybe over 30,000, 40,000 people listen to those talks online. So tomorrow evening, after the interviews, I'll be going to Nolamara, which means the questions tomorrow will be asked of our two sisters over there. So all the tough questions I'm going to keep till tomorrow. So you can actually find out who they are. You can give them their names. So would you like to introduce yourselves? Suki from Dhamma. What does Suki mean? You're a Suki? She's Venerable Happiness from Dhammasara. And how long have you been in Brown?
I have been a nun for seminary for 2 years. That's 23 months.
So you're due to become bhikkhuni soon. Very good. And the second nun.
I'm Rajiva. I'm from Germany, and I've been in Brown for 2 months.
Brown for 2 months. So you're just baby nun. Very good. Excellent. So, and you will find out more about them tomorrow. So you can ask them, why did you become a nun? Why did you come all the way to Perth? Why? So all those questions for tomorrow. Is it true that Prince Siddhartha took 7 steps on 7 lotus flowers as soon as he was born? I don't know. I wasn't there. So these are nice little stories, but if they did or he didn't, it doesn't make much difference. But what is interesting is part of that birth story was that he spoke and said, "This is my last life." Now that is interesting because those of you who heard me talk before, I've collected anecdotes from trustworthy parents who said that their children did talk when they were babies. And that's freaky, but it's really interesting. And if anyone else has had that experience, please let me know, because the first time there was these 2 kids, Peter and Paul, and that's right, Peter was the elder son, Paul had just been born. They'd just come back from hospital, maybe about a week old or something like that. And the mum and dad were in the room, and they said to their elder son, Peter, who was about 2 or 3 years of age, "Go and say good night to your baby brother, Paul, and then go to bed." Because it was in like a carrier, a cot, whatever it's called. And so little Peter went over to his little baby brother, only a week or 2 old, a week or 2 old. "Good night, Paul." And Paul said, "Good night, Peter." The mum and dad, what happened? And they both stopped what they were doing, and they just stared in disbelief at their little baby. And they said it was amazing. Their elder son, Peter, just obliged him. He didn't have to be asked. Peter said again to his little baby brother, "Good night, Paul." And this time, with both of them paying full attention, they heard their little kid say the second time, "Good night, Peter." And that freaked them out so much they came to talk to the monks about it. You know, I don't know, they know that we know about these things. They don't go and see a priest, they don't go and see a rabbi, they always come and see the monks about these things, which is brilliant because we collect all these great stories. They weren't Buddhist, they were just shocked. Their little baby spoke. And interestingly, they mentioned to us that the baby spoke in adult voice. It wasn't like a baby voice. It was like a voice similar to an adult would speak, but it came from their baby. And when I've told that story, there's a Malaysian couple, and they came up to me after and said, "Same thing happened with our kid. We've never told anybody because we thought no one will believe us. And if any of you have had that experience with your kids, they were freshly born and they spoke in the first weeks of life, please let me know, because you collect these weird experiences. But I must tell you the best of those anecdotes, because this happened in a maternity ward in the USA. And everyone saw it, it was real, there was no imagination. The baby just came out of the womb, probably still attached to the umbilical cord, looked around and spoke the memorable words, "Oh no, not again." Those are the 3 cases of babies who have spoken which I've collected. The last one was a classic. And of course the Buddha is supposed to have spoken. And I always thought that was a myth, but when you collect these other stories, maybe that was true. Yeah, maybe he did speak.
And
but
that question is not mine, but there is a sutta as well, isn't it? Ashta and Buddha.
Yeah, no, it's in the Majjhima, the Achara Abhuta Sutta, the weird and the marvelous. Yes, with Ananda saying all these qualities. So that could have been added, and it doesn't make any difference whether it was real or not real. It's just like interesting. But the thing about speaking when you were born apparently does happen. The vocal cords are not supposed to have been properly developed, the brain is not ready for speech, but people have had that, and they've seen it happen.
And if an ordinary child like this one could speak,
Yeah.
the greatest being ever to
Yeah.
walk on the earth,
A Buddha would be able to speak, yeah.
could have spoken.
Indeed, yeah. So, that may have been what happened. Who knows what might have happened. Anyway, when I wrote in previous question, monk this, monk that, I meant you talk too much about monks trying to convince people that it's superior or something and try to ordain. Yes, exactly. Try to ordain. Now, it's a nice lifestyle to be a monk, if you can be, or a nun. And when you look at it, there's so many engineers, there's so many doctors, there's so many business people, there's so many policemen. And one thing which is lovely to have is more like Buddhist monks and nuns here in Australia. And you can see the sort of work which I do, and it gives a lot of happiness to people. And if you have like more people who are going out there teaching and helping people, saving lives, and you do that. I had to get rid of them, but you have all these letters which people say, thank you for saving my life. If it wasn't your book, your talk, your videos, I'd be dead by now. Thank you so much for curing the cancers, the lung cancers, and goodness knows what else. And I kept all those little letters until the last range retreat. It was just a mess in my room, so I just decided to throw them all out. But there's hundreds of them. And it just shows you just how much, you've really helped people. Big time. And so imagine that you could do that as well, or your children, or somebody else. A Buddhist monk, a Buddhist nun could do a huge amount in this world. When you understand about the nature of the mind and meditation, that you have a power which other people don't have, and because of your precepts, that you are this trustworthy, really good person who's not into this for the money. And many other people, they do become sort of good teachers, but they get corrupted by the money or by the fame. I've told all the monks here, and I tell you that I do get quite famous now, but if I get above myself, I told all the monks, kick my backside if I get sort of too proud and too sort of conceited, because sometimes you can't see it yourself, so you ask other people to make sure to keep me in line, and that's for you as well. If I get overly conceited and I want to be treated like royalty, here's my bottom, there's your foot, connect the two. Because I know it's a danger, because see, other people got lost like that, and we always think that we're in control of this and we can do it ourselves, but no, you do need protection from your friends to keep you in line. Ooh, now this is a nice one. Dear Ajahn, I finally cracked it today. I wonder what you cracked. Did you need to go to the hospital with your leg, or was it your head? No, it's very good. I finally cracked it today, yay. Now I know what you mean. All these days I was sleeping and daydreaming. Today I finally got it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I haven't said what they've got, but if you look for the person with a big smile on their face, it must be them. Very good. Dear Ajahn Brahm, the mind is so tricky. How do you let go of this wanting? Instead of just enjoying nice meditation, I'm always waiting for the next step to come. Good, you're seeing that. I tell myself to be content and not to want anything, but then it has to go on. Finally, there's always this wanting, hiding behind the not wanting. And instead of being happy with the nice meditations I have, I'm disappointed because it didn't go further. How to overcome this? You've already got 90% of the way when you see the problem. Now, I see you, Mara. Once you see it, it's very easy to say, oh, I'm not going to get involved in that anymore. And instead of trying to get jhanas, instead of trying to even stop wanting. So if the mind wants to want, it can want. If it doesn't want to want, it doesn't have to want. One of my stories, please excuse me if I keep repeating these stories, but every life is limited, and I've only got so many stories in my life. And after all, being a monk is a boring life, so it's not many things happen to me, but as a monk I've had a pretty interesting life as monks go, but imagine the ordinary monk's life. It's not very much to write home about. Got up in the morning, meditated, had lunch, meditated and went to bed. That's about it. But I was in this monastery in the north of Thailand. Perfect monastery. And everything was going okay for the first couple of weeks. And then I started to get restless. There was no one in this monastery, just me. It was abandoned up in the mountains, good food, a beautiful cave, and everyone, they just wanted to feed me, that's all. They didn't want to ask any questions. Perfect monastery. And after about 3 weeks, I was getting really restless. After 4 weeks, it was getting so bad, my restlessness, I couldn't meditate. Every time I tried to watch my breathing, all these unmonkish thoughts came into my head. Thoughts of old girlfriends. I wonder if she's still available. No, stop it. I wonder if she marries me. No, keep away, I'm a monk. I like being a monk. No, sexual fantasies, dreams, romance. Perhaps I haven't really met her yet. Perhaps she's out there somewhere waiting for me. Our eyes, our hearts haven't met yet, but when they do, shut up. I had all these thoughts coming. Now, I really love being a monk, you know that. And I try to push them out and go back to the breath. They kept coming in again. You may understand what it means that when you really get sort of really restless, it's such a battle. And my problem was I didn't have someone to go to interviews with. I was there by myself in this monastery for about 6 months. And so when I started going crazy, I just didn't know what to do. I went into the hall and I bowed to the Buddha statue. And basically I said, help, I'm going crazy. And an idea came to my mind. I don't know if it's the Buddha or it's just the fact you do a ceremony like that and you have just a little different way of seeing, and an idea came up, do a deal. And my deal was I would watch my breath for 23 hours of the day, or most of the day, and 1 hour a day I'd give to sexy thoughts. 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. every afternoon was sexy thought time. I do whatever I want, romantic thoughts, sex, anything would go between 3 and 4. And I wouldn't try to control it at all, and I wouldn't be embarrassed. If you want to think like that, you can, but only 1 hour a day. The rest of the day you behave. And I thought that was a reasonable idea. Just like this man who said he wanted to become a monk, this was many years ago, he said he really wanted to become a monk on one condition, and that was he could have every Saturday evening off. He was serious. I said, it doesn't work that way. So that was my deal. Most of the day I'd behave, and 1 hour I'd let myself go crazy mad. Whatever you want, you can do that. And it was still a battle, even with that deal. Okay, you can think 3 o'clock, wait till 3, you can think whatever you want, but still my mind wanted to think about it now. And so I was really tired. When it got to 3 p.m., I was exhausted, as you are when you fight your mind. So I went back to my hut. I leaned against the wall, put my feet out, and said, okay, any thought you want now, the most ridiculous, romantic, sexually deviant, whatever, just come in, I'm not going to stop you. And it was a great experience because for the next hour I watched every breath without missing one. It was just so easy. And that's why I tell you that story. And it was crazy. When I was fighting the mind, trying to make it behave, all these thoughts were just coming in just so fast and strong. But when I just let go, my mind was peaceful. It's teaching me a lesson. When I tried to let go, I was feeding the restless mind, making it stronger. I was giving it energy. Every time I tried to chase the thought out, I was making it stronger. When I let go, it's okay, do whatever you want. Then it was peaceful. If you understand what I mean, when you're letting go, your mind just gets still straight away, if you really let go. So that's actually what happens. So in the end, you mess around this way, mess around that way. Sometimes you have to get really frustrated. I've had enough of this meditation. I just can't do it. I'm always restless. I'm trying to let go. I don't get it. I've given up. I'm not going to try and let go anymore. And then you let go. It's incredible when that happens. People have some really good fun. Anyway, thank you very much for the most wonderful treatment, for your marvelous teachings. You ain't heard nothing yet. The next couple of days, the big ones are coming. Anyway, I didn't write any questions during the whole retreat because all my questions were answered during your very inspirational talks and answers in question time. Thank you. With metta, by the way, this is a smiley face. So this is from Smiley Face. Thank you, Ajahn Brahm, for your brilliant teachings. Oh, this is fan club hour. Very good. It's much better than answering questions. Because I like reading out my fan club letters, because I am actually, as many of you know me, I'm a very humble monk. And if you are a humble monk, I always tell people you should flaunt it. What's the point of being humble if no one knows about it? Okay, I'm just reading these stuff out. Thank you, Ajahn Brahm, for your brilliant teachings. We wish that you will be our spiritual teacher in our next life. Hang on. I don't want to get reborn again. Thank you very much. A very big thank you to Bianca, our wonderful retreat manager. We are very grateful to you, Bianca, for putting such a big effort. Do you want her to be the cook in your next life too? Poor Bianca. Anyway, dear Ajahn, you have been talking about kindness and compassion. The most kindest and compassionate man I ever met is a 40-ish Australian whom I work with. He never had an unkind word to say about the most wickedest of people. Although he earned a huge salary, he was frugal and lived in an old house with a black and white TV. He still wears an old Australian Post cardigan given by his dad, who worked there. What moved me most is when I went back to work after a long and hard treatment for cancer, he told me that he prays for me every day. That nearly made me cry. He continues to pray for me even now. We no longer work together. This man is my inspiration. He is not a Buddhist, he is a very devout Catholic. Thank you. He is a much better human being than some Buddhists I know. Yeah, I know, but there are some Buddhists who are much better human beings than some Catholics I know as well. So there are good Buddhists, there are good Catholics, there are good everybody. So we don't worry what a person says they are, but we do concern what a person does. Now that's really important. What a person does is more important than who they say they are. So that's very good. So as long as a person is kind, I don't care what religion they are, as long as they are generous and peaceful, that's a wonderful thing to be able to do. Dear Ajahn, my job makes me use up a lot of physical mental energy. After work I feel too tired to do meditation. Instead I do yoga or seek sensory pleasures, e.g. watch movies. This makes me spend little time in meditation in regular days. If I force myself to do it, it's just sloth and torpor. Any good suggestion to keep my meditation ongoing in regular days? Yeah. There was this fellow I knew, he said he meditated 1 hour every day, always without fail, except when he was busy. And when he was busy, he meditated 2 hours a day. Now you can see something very important in this. When you are very busy and you get stressed out at work, you have a very demanding, physically and mentally demanding job, that's when you really need to put more time into meditation. Because you find like half an hour of meditation in the middle of the day, you make up by getting 3 hours done in 2 hours in the afternoon without getting stressed. Which is one of the reasons why that piece of advice is on Harvard Business School blog, investment of time. Coming from me, I can trace it where they got that from. And when you have half an hour of meditation in the middle of the day, it means your brain has a rest. You can be more efficient in the afternoon, more productive, better ideas come up, and the work flows easily. The trouble with modern people, they have lots of work to do, but they don't know how to do it efficiently. So you get tired, you get stressed. And what do you do when you get tired and stressed? You keep pushing. So you get more tired, more stressed, productivity goes down, have arguments with people in the office, arguments with people on the way home, arguments, with your family when you get home. You're a mess. And you don't need to do it that way. Find a nice place. If there's not a room in your office, a cupboard will do. If a cupboard you can't find, there is always the toilets. You can lock yourself in there for half an hour. You can take a cushion inside to sit on the chair. And if people sort of say, you were in there a long time, well, constipation. Because you were constipated mentally. And you need to sort of let go of all of that sort of tiredness and stress. So you were cranially constipated. So this is, you're not really lying. And that means that if you can give yourself that half an hour in the middle of the day, you're far more productive and less tired. You get more work done with less stress. It's an obvious no-brainer to me. That's why you teach that, in corporations. Dell Computing has a timeout room where anybody at any time of the day, this is in the headquarters somewhere over in the United States, any worker at any time of the day can go into that timeout room. It is actually screened. You can't get SMSs, tweets, you can't get any signal in the timeout room. And you just rest there, meditate, just relax, and afterwards you go back to work. And people know it's an investment in their workforce. They don't get so sick, they have much better family lives because they don't get stressed out and take it out on the loved ones, and they get more work done. Samsung also, everyone in Samsung has to be a meditator. That's part of the corporate culture. Whether you're a Christian or a Buddhist or whoever, you have to meditate. Google is doing the same. So this is actually modern corporations. To deal with the stress, to get your people to be more productive, you give them half an hour in the middle of the day to meditate. It's an investment in your workforce. So that's actually what you can do. And then, because you meditate in the middle of the day, you get more work done in the afternoon, and in the evening, you relax, you can meditate, you're not so exhausted. The problem is when you get tired and then you try and get energy out, it's just not efficient. Pushing yourself really wastes huge amounts of energy. So that's why modern world should learn about meditation. Could you please explain what sankharas are and how they're linked with karma? Are they the same thing? The word sankharas is a Pali word which has different meanings in different contexts. I think you mean the what's called the volitional formations, the sankharas of body, speech and mind. These are intentional acts of speech, intentional acts of doing something, intentional thoughts. In other words, this is not accidental thoughts. You mean to do something, you mean to say something, and because you mean it's intentional, that means it's karmic. If you just step on a snail because you don't see it, there's no karmic consequence there. You just didn't know. If you sort of borrow somebody's shoes outside and you thought they were yours, that's not stealing. You didn't know. It was unintentional. It's one of the reasons why when you go to a Buddhist temple, because you know why we take the shoes off? People don't know why we take shoes off, all these traditions. Why you take shoes off before you come into a Buddhist temple? Whoever told you, or you just done it because everyone else does it? The reason is because in Buddhist temples there are monks like me who tell very bad jokes. And if you had the shoes, you'd probably throw them at me. So we keep all the shoes outside so I'm safe. And it happened to Mr. Bush. It happened to quite a few people throwing shoes at people. So that's why they keep the shoes outside and the monks are safe now. So, where was I going with this? So Sankara, if it's intentional, then it's karma. No intention, it's no karma. So that may be what you mean. What is a Buddhist ethnic origin? Are there any statues or images that might depict its images more or less accurately? No, this is an image. No one knows what the Buddha looked like they don't know what Jesus looked like. But in all the movies, Jesus has got gold hair and blue eyes. And everybody knows that's totally ridiculous because he was an Arab. So, he'd have curly hair, short, and brown eyes and brown skin. But, because he became famous in the West, he looks like a Westerner. Same with the Buddha. If the Buddha becomes famous in the West, he'd probably also have blue eyes and gold. I don't know. But you look at the Thai figures and they look Thai. Look at the Sri Lankan, they look Sri Lankan. And the Burmese look Burmese. They always add, their ethnicity because, we always want to identify with that statue. Now you see the Buddha statue, it has, this one over here has a flame coming out of its head. Sometimes have a bump on top of its head. And so sometimes people think, wow, the Buddha must have been a bit of a freak, because have you ever seen a person with a flame coming out of their head? I haven't. Have you seen a person with a bump on top of their head? If they've got a bump on top of their head, you probably go to a hospital and take it out. It's a tumour or something. So, this is... But the reason, when we tried to get our Buddha statue for Bodhinyana, we had a chance to make a Western one without the bump on the head. And then, the people over in Thailand, where we had it made, said, no, you have to have the bump on the head. I said, why? He said, because that is the symbol of the Buddha. And that's how archaeologists, when they dig up old statues, that's how they know it's a Buddha, if it's got the protuberance on the top. If it's got a flat head, it's usually Mahavira, the leader of the Jains. So this is just a symbol which tells people this is a Buddha. And so it's not meant, to be a physical representation. It's meant to be a symbol, a metaphor for the Buddha. And so for artists, when we get a Buddha, you can have the bump on top of the head, that's not really important, or the afro hairstyle. It is afro, little curls on the top of the head. And, it says in the story that his hair curled up, but, that is not really consistent with other things in the sutras, where many times there's stories where people wouldn't recognize the Buddha. There's one of my favorite stories where this monk was traveling from the west of India, where he'd ordained. He wanted to see the great teacher. He'd never seen the Buddha before. So he was walking towards the Ganges Valley to meet the Buddha. And he came to like a potter's house and said, can I sleep in your shed tonight? Just a place out of the wind and out of the rain. And the potter said, of course you can. Just, you're a holy man, just get some grass, you can sleep over there. And after he got settled in, half an hour later, another monk came, and the other monk said, oh, I'm traveling also, would you mind if I share the place with you? He said, no, there's plenty of room in here, you can stay here as well. And then these two monks, in the evening, like good monks, they started meditating. And the monk who came first was meditating there. They said, oh, this other monk, he meditates very well, I better carry on. And so they meditated all night together. They never had any sleep. They were sort of impressed with each other. And in the morning, this monk, he said, I'm going off to, this monk who came in second said, oh, you're a good meditator, who's your teacher? And he said, oh, I ordained with this monk, I forget who it was, he's the disciple of the Buddha, and I'm on the way to go and see the Buddha. And he said after that, he said, who is your teacher? And the other monk said, I have no teacher. What do you mean you have no teacher? What's your name? I'm the Buddha. Ah! I've been all night meditating with the Buddha and I never recognized you. I'm so sorry. And he bowed and said, oh, never mind. And it was a great little story there because it actually reminded me of another. Okay, when I start these things, it's just a funny story. So I'm not trying to sort of to equate myself with the Buddha, but last May I was in Vietnam. And when I was in Vietnam at a conference, I was waiting for the conference, one session to start, and this Vietnamese monk came and sat next to me, and he could speak enough English. He said, hello. He said, I'm a Vietnamese monk. And they asked me where I'm from. And I said, I'm from Australia. Oh, you're from Australia, said the Vietnamese monk. Do you know a monk called Ajahn Brahm? He said, and I said, I am Ajahn Brahm. Ah! He actually did that. Ah! He was quite shocked. But anyhow, so I'm not trying to compare myself to the Buddha, obviously, but that's what happened, that people couldn't recognize the Buddha. And there's many stories like that. So he looked pretty ordinary. So you wouldn't actually think that he had a special hair all curled up, or he had long ears, or that he was any way different than another monk. He may have had some qualities which, was quite impressive, but not that impressive that people could tell him apart. But we have these images now because it's become the tradition. And the most important part of the image is, again, just this sense of peace and kindness which it sort of portrays to people. Not someone in pain, not somebody who is scowling at you, but you try and get an image which is smiley, which you look at and you feel quite sort of safe and reassured, which can emanate some peace. And it's very difficult to get the great images. It's one of the hardest things to sculpt a beautiful image of the Buddha. And I always I'm of the opinion that the most beautiful statue of the Buddha in the world is the one at Sarnath in India. You see it in many, many books. It's called the Dhammacakka image. It was found by the British, buried, and it had a little nick on its nose. Other than that, it's perfect. And it's in the museum at Sarnath outside of Benares. And every time I see it, it makes me cry. It's so beautiful. I just get inspired by that one. It's gorgeous. It's like art which just gets right inside of you and just makes me teary. And I always remember the first time I went there, there's anecdotes now. First time I went there, I knew it was in there somewhere and I really wanted to see it. Everybody else was looking at the ruins, but I wanted to go into that museum. I went in there by myself. And this is India. You don't have guidebooks. You don't have directions. It's totally, this in Sarnath in Bihar. It was totally, no, it's not in Bihar, it's the other state. But anyway, it was totally disorganized. So I had to go and find it. I was exploring. I remember just going in the corridor, turning a corner, and there it was at the end of the corridor. You could see it. Bowing like anything, because I was really inspired by it. The second time I was there, I was with a group. You were there as well? Yeah. Okay, yeah. Oh, no, it's the third time. The second time you were there. Second time, with a group, I knew where it's going to be. I was prepared. As soon as I came out, started crying, tears coming down. The third time was the best. It was the third time with Elaine. That I knew it was there. I was prepared to cry. I was prepared to get some nice inspiration coming up. And I turned the corner and covered with a cloth. They were painting the ceiling. And you were prepared for it. You were looking forward to it. One of the highlights of the trip, you'd gone all that way, covered with a cloth. And it's just so disappointing. And then the workman, no one asked him. He looked at us and he took off the cloth. You can see it again. Those images, that image in particular, really inspires me. It's beautiful. Anyway, that's for me anyway. It doesn't inspire everyone like that, but some people it does. Yeah?
About Buddha's special, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Venerable Mahakashapa, when he was going looking for the Buddha,
Yeah.
there is that story that Buddha sat there showing all his special qualities
Yeah.
and signs.
Yeah.
That means he must have had some of these.
You wonder what he said in one sutta, that showing off those signs to Mahakasapa, other people couldn't see them. Is it some sort of spiritual body or something? But for most people, they didn't know who he was. Even at the end of his life, Ajatasattu, the king, he went into the big hall in the bamboo grove, And all the monks were sitting there, and he had to ask Jivaka, the doctor, which one is the Buddha? He didn't know who he was. He said the one, he was in the pillar facing east. Because he was facing east, that's where we get the custom that the Buddha always has to face east. Comes from there. Anyway, ethnic origin, he was Indian. Dear Ajahn, is it fine for Buddhists to host hotel wedding lunch serving meat dishes to guests who are non-vegetarian? It's obviously that you're kind to everybody. You find out what people want. If you're hosting something, do your research and have meat dishes for people who like meat, have vegetarian dishes for people who like vegetarian dishes, spicy for spicy people, plain for plain people, whatever. So do your research. Because when I was, not a wedding lunch, I was once invited to a state dinner with Queen Elizabeth. And this was a dinner, but I was going to go anyway because it was a prestigious invitation for the Buddhists. So I went along there, and obviously in these occasions people do their research and find out what you like to eat. So there was 3 courses. I think the first course was some sort of soup, but I never had any soup. I can't take the soup in the evening because that's against the rules. So they gave me a plate of cheddar cheese. And I thought, that's really, and it was really good cheese. I mean, not just your rubbish. This was a state dinner with Queen Elizabeth. And that was really delicious. And I was talking to people, and then they took it away. And I always took it back again. This is nice cheese. And they said, there's more coming. So they took that plate away. And then the main course, I forget, it was some like Australian lamb and something or other. I forget what it was. And for me, it was some other sort of Australian cheese. Because it's a state dinner, it has to be made in Australia. So some other Australian cheese. And other really nice stuff as well. So 2 different types of cheese. One for the first course, one for the second course. When they finished the second course, the third course they had, I remember they had macadamia pie for the guests and for the Queen. And for me, they had dark chocolate. They'd done their research. And I thought, wow, this is really, really good. Not just, I'm not supposed to have milk chocolate, it was dark chocolate. And they'd really gone out of their way to do their research, find out what their guests wanted or what they could eat from me. So that's what you should do. If you've got a guest, then find out what they like to eat. People with sort of dietary requirements, find out first of all. And also don't just assume that you know what they like to eat. You can find out, ask people. Dear Ajahn, when I ask from the mind, what would you like to do, go for a walk or meditate, etc., am I really asking from the mind or from the will? What it's doing, it's a way of being mindful of like the needs of your body, the needs of your mind. Because you say, how am I mindful? Sometimes just ask a question. If I want to find out just how Ananda is, I say, how are you? Anything you want? As soon as you ask a question, you get an answer. If you don't ask the question, you're just making assumptions all the time. So sometimes I ask my body, are you okay? How are you doing, Lee? Do you want to move? And they tell me, okay, no, it's fine. But sometimes it's wanting to move, and I don't ask the question, so I'm unmindful of it. So asking a question is just a skillful means to establish mindfulness in a certain area. So you ask your mouth, does it want a drink? And if you ask it, oh yeah, actually I could do with a drink of water. If you don't ask it, you can actually have that desire, that need sometimes to have water, and you don't recognize it. You're just too busy doing something else. So asking a question is a way of establishing mindfulness on that particular area. Dear Ajahn, you mentioned yesterday that it is allowed to talk about someone's spiritual attainments once they passed away. Could you please say something about Ayakema? Because she's passed away now. I know one thing about Ayakema. She was very, very good at the slot machine. They call it, the gambling pokey machine. You don't know that story? Oh, this is one of the great stories. She was teaching a meditation retreat over in UK. And once the retreat was finished, she was being taken from the retreat place to Heathrow Airport by a woman called Ajahn Brahm. She's in Sydney. I think she's supposed to be coming over to Perth soon again, Anya. She spent a rains retreat at Bodhinyana Monastery many years ago. And she was the driver. So they had to find a place for lunch. If you've been to England, you know that many of the eateries are next to pubs. And actually to get into the restaurant, you had to actually go through the front of the bar and into the restaurant. They didn't mind doing that. They weren't drinking. They were just going to have lunch. So they had lunch together, and Anya finished first because she's going to have a meal in the evening, and Aya came, was eating a little bit more. So Anya said, look, I've got a few British coins left, a few pound coins, £2 coins, and it's a waste of time taking these back to, I think they were going to Germany, and I'll just get rid of them in the slot machines. They had slot machines in the bar there. You put a pound coin or £2, you move the handle and all these things go round and round. And she was just doing this just to get rid of the coins so she didn't have to carry them. And so she was putting them in and putting the handle, putting them in, putting the handle, nothing was happening. And she just put the coin in when Aya came or walked past. And I checked this out, this is 100% accurate, how it occurred. And Anya saw Aya came walking past and said, you've got all the good karma. That was the word she used. You've got all the good karma, you pull the handle. And Aya Kema just had a moment's slip of mindfulness. And she pulled the handle. It was absolutely true. No joke. The wheels went round, jackpot. The big jackpot. And all this money poured out into this nun's robes. You're not allowed to touch the stuff, but it's all pouring out and pouring and pouring and pouring out. Now you think that's the only rule she broke? No. There's much worse than that to come. Once all this money had poured out of the machine, I don't know how many thousands of pounds or whatever, everyone was quiet in the pub. They put down their glasses of beer, whatever, and they just stared in disbelief at this nun. And the next thing which happened, the bartender picked up the bell and rang the bell and told the nun it was the custom, the tradition. You know how strong traditions are in places like England. It's a tradition, whoever wins the jackpot has to buy a round of alcohol for everybody in the bar. And Aya Kema had no choice. The first time in 2,500 years a nun has brought beers, whiskies, gin and tonics to so many people. That's why you should not do those things as a monk. If you pull the handle, you're going to win something, and you're really in trouble then. That's Aya Kema's story. Lovely story, absolutely true. You can't make these things up. Ajahn, in this meditation retreat, I'm enjoying everything except in the mornings. I'm woken up very rudely by an inconsiderate meditator who goes about making tea, coffee very early in the morning. Probably that means about 6:30. Making an almighty racket. Bang, bang, clatter, clatter, stomp, stomp. Isn't considering and care for others a basic something for a great... isn't consideration and care for others a basic criteria for a good Buddhist? I'd like to woke up peacefully and silently. I think your message about being silent as a burglar is lost on this person. I remember reading when I was a young Buddhist layperson about this teacher called Gurdjieff. He was a Russian guy. He was just a bit of a weirdo, but he was not many sort of people teaching in those days. And when he died, there was actually always this one person in his community who was really a pain in the neck for everybody. And the community would always meet together and say, can't we get rid of this person? He's causing us so much trouble. He's noisy, he's arrogant, he just never does anything. We ask him to, he always does his own thing. And Gurdjieff said, no, he stays. Because he was the leader of the community, so they had to stay. When he died, they went through all the accounts and something, and they found out that Gurdjieff was personally paying him to stay there. To stir people up. So he was the deliberate test to see whether you were compassionate or not, and see how tolerant you were. So maybe that every hut I've selected, that person, one in every hut, just to test to see whether you've understood the teaching of it's not the sound disturbs you, you disturb the sound. No, I haven't done that, but look, people at all sorts of different levels, when they start meditating. Sometimes people don't realize how much noise they make. So be kind to them, and all you need to do is just go up to them and say, look, you're making a bit of a noise. Can you do it a bit quieter? It's all right to say things like that because it's important. And they'll probably say, I never realized, sorry. And they'll make it a bit sort of quieter. You can actually make some suggestions. I think that you can borrow from somebody a thermos. So look, boil the water sort of in the afternoon or evening, so that in the morning you don't have to do the kettle, and you can find a plastic spoon somewhere so it doesn't make such a noise when they stir in everything. So help them. Don't just just criticize and say, oh, this person makes all this noise. So they always say this Chinese saying, rather light a candle than complain about darkness. Talk to the person and see if you can help them, and find strategies so it doesn't disturb you, and so they can still have their coffee in the morning. But always, again, try and be quiet. That could be you. So, try and be quiet in the morning. And you don't need to make a noise to make coffee. You can do it so silently. Just boil the kettle very quietly, and just pour it in, just so no one hears. And you put the coffee in, and just quietly stir it, and you drink it. And then you get this incredible, beautiful taste. Oh, that's delicious. Because you're aware, mindful. That's the way to do it. How can you love a parent or a partner without attachment? You know that you can love a parent without attachment if you can let them go when they die. So you love them? What does love mean? You want them to be happy. That you care about them. You want them to be free, happy, at peace. So if you really love a parent and they're about to die, you say, Mum, look, I'll give you permission to go. Don't stay around for me. Your body is way past its use-by date. Off you go. And that's how you love a person. You let them go. You set them free. Because the whole point is, in love, that their happiness is the most important. Yeah, you'll miss them, but you're so glad that they are now happy. They're free from this old, sick, tired body. You let them go. So do you love your teacher, your monk? Let me go. I love you. Ajahn Brahm, your happiness is the most important thing in the whole world. Bye-bye. And if that is your partner, I always say this is the acid test, that you really love your partner and their happiness is the most important thing in the world for you. Isn't that sometimes what you say to people when you get married? Darling, I just want you to be happy. That's the whole purpose of my life. Your happiness is more important than anything else in the whole world. And you know if it's true, if when you go home after this retreat, you find that your partner has disappeared and is off in Bali having a sexy week with your best friend. If you really love your partner, you too will be so delighted that your partner is having better sex with your best friend than they have with you. They're so happy. I was so happy you're having a beautiful time in Bali, with my best friend. Oh, that makes me so joyful, having such better time with them than you ever had with me. Oh, I'm so happy because your happiness is the most important thing in the whole world for me. Or would you be really angry? What? You shameless woman, you shameless man, off there playing around when I'm meditating. That shows that it's not real love, that's attachment. You need them, you want them, you can't let them go. So it's interesting, that love, which can let a person go. And I've seen that, and it's a very beautiful love. when the person dies. And the loved ones come along and say, we let you go. I want you to be free. And I've often seen this, sometimes a young man who's dying, and he says to his young wife, darling, if you find somebody else, just marry them. I just want you to be happy. You don't have to sort of think it's going to upset me. And they just give this beautiful freedom and permission for the people they love to carry on in life. It's beautiful when that happens. That's a very touching love. Today when I saw we had Magnum ice creams for lunch, I almost orgasmed. You had Magnum ice creams here. Why didn't you tell me? I would have stayed here. I almost orgasmed. The food here is a bliss better than sex. Get away. You freak. But it is true that when you get some good meditation, the food does get very delicious. And you can have the Magnum ice cream back home, and it will not taste as nice as it did today. Try it out. Friend Ajahn Brahm, could you be kind enough to explain the things which we see when we close our eyes? Or is it the thought comes to our mind? Can blind person see the same things whether he has his eyes closed? This is, I'm not quite sure he's seeing the mental images. He calls it rupa here, but I'm not quite sure exactly what you mean. But when you close your eyes, you're not seeing things through the sense of sight, but you can, it's like seeing things, but through the sixth sense, through the mind. The mind can sort of bring up images which are almost indistinguishable with what you actually see. And these are the visions which you can see, and you interpret it as sight. Just to give you an example of that, the nimittas, they are not seen with the eye. That is a object of the mind sense, and it is not a light, because if it was a light that's sometimes so bright they would make you blind. It's like seeing the sun. But because it's a mental image, it doesn't affect the sense of sight. But the thing is that we interpret it as an image of the sense of sight. That's the nearest thing we have to understand these mental images. Literally, we don't have enough experience, we don't have a language for that mental world. So we borrow language from our experience of the world outside, especially through seeing. Because that, for most people, is the dominant sense. We are visual beings more than anything else. Most of our brain is taken up with seeing stuff. Hearing, yes. Feeling, yes. Taste and smell is very little. But the eye is the most dominant sense. So that when we do see a nimitta, it's a mental image, but we interpret it as a light. But again, it's a light you never see in the real world. It's much deeper, purer. So this is actually something to explain the lights which you see in the mind. Dear Ajahn, like the emotion of inspiration, how do we use the emotion of faith and devotion to gain deeper stages? Thanks. If it's the emotion of faith, it's a very dangerous emotion because you don't know who to have faith in. And sometimes, you get very inspiring teachers and they end up disrobing. That's what happened to me when I first went to Cambridge. I had a very, very inspiring Thai monk who was teaching. I thought, wow, this is a Thai monk who could speak English and makes a lot of sense. And then he gave 3 lectures in a row, and he was supposed to give the 4th lecture. He never turned up. Where is he? Oh, he's disrobed and got married. And that really thought, oh no. At last I found someone I thought was going to be a teacher, and now he's messing around. So sometimes faith can be very difficult. And especially faith in a monk or a nun, because sometimes it goes too far. And I always remind Buddhists that you take refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma and the Sangha. You don't take refuge in Buddha, Dhamma and Ajahn Brahm. You don't take refuge in Buddha, Dhamma and Ajahn Mahabur, Ajahn Chah. And there's too many gurus. You don't take refuge in Buddha, Dhamma and my guru in the Tibetan tradition. It's always Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. So the teachers are there to inspire you, but the faith should never be in this one monk, one nun, one Rinpoche or one Dalai Lama. It should be in the Buddha, the teachings and the Sangha. And this, the problem is we always tend to latch on to one person, and that becomes our guru. And you can get some really good teachers, but a lot of times, you latch on to sort of charismatic, but sort of, what's it called, monks or nuns who aren't the real thing. So be careful there. So if you do have faith, it's much better to have faith in the teachings rather than the teacher. It's much better to have faith in the path rather than in the attainments. You know that it's working. You can see good results in yourself. So don't have faith in the end result. Have faith in this process. It's working. Because if you have faith in Nibbana, sometimes I tell, it's really stupid that sometimes you look at yourself that this whole practice here is leading to Nibbana. I'm not quite sure what Nibbana is. It's like going on a bus, and you don't know where the destination is. Do you really want to get to that destination in the end? You just take it on faith that Nibbana is some place worth going to, but we don't really understand it yet. So don't have faith in the destination, have faith in the path, in the journey, because that's something which you can check out and you know that this is going in a good direction. It feels like a good direction. The simile of like going down, following the stream in the misty mountains. You go in the right direction. Have faith in that, which means your faith does not get misplaced. It's not just in Buddhism, in other traditions, especially Christianity, and obviously now in Islam, people have faith in these violent people, these crazy people. And I don't know what it is about crazy people, but they can be very charismatic. And because of that, they get people into huge amounts of difficulty with cults, with violence, and just revolutionary movements, and causes so much misery in this world. So be careful of faith. It can be very dangerous if it's put in the wrong places. Anyway, that's enough of that. In one of your talks, you mentioned that the world was created by the mind. Can you share more on this? Ha ha ha. This is quantum physics. Because we don't realize just how much our mind creates. That is basic quantum science. This world is not what you see, it's not what you hear or touch. It is something much more weird than that. It's just a smear of probabilities where almost anything can exist. And as soon as you make an observation, as soon as you see, you touch, you know, of all those possibilities, only one happens. The Schrödinger equation collapses. And now you see this world after you've interfered with it. Without interfering with this world, you just can't know it. So this world is not what's out there. It's the world after you have changed it and interfered with it. You create it in a much more powerful way than you can ever imagine. And that's when I was doing quantum physics, I thought, wow, this is amazing, mind-blowing stuff. But a lot of people, they didn't sort of stand back long enough to see the consequences of the equations they were writing down on the boards. But that's the truth of the matter. It's powerful. And also on that, one of the things I've been saying, I mentioned this recently, I gave a talk at the Australian Institute of Physics about creation, because that is one of the big things, which is the problems. And often people ask Buddhists, as Buddhists, who created the world? And that's always a big problem, isn't it? If it was a creator, then we ask, well, who created the creator? Now, if there was a first cause, then what caused the first cause? It just kicks the can down the road. And all that idea of a beginning of a world and a cause for the beginning of the world was never very satisfactory. I never got a good answer for that until you came across Buddhism. Now, the answer to creation of this universe. Where did this universe come from? It comes from the following little anecdote, or following little metaphor. I'm going to start with something very simple, which you all know about 300 years ago, maybe 400 years ago. Everybody thought this earth was flat. Everyone was flat earthers. And it was obvious, that was the way they looked at the world, that was their perception, and they really believed if you got in a boat and sailed over the oceans, you'd come to the end of the world, and you'd fall off, or something would happen, you'd go into some deep abyss. Because they thought and they had the idea that the earth was a limited area and it had boundaries, had beginnings and ends. And of course, we all know that people like Columbus and other people, they sailed around the world and realized it didn't have an end. But it had a finite area, the planet Earth. There's only so much land and so much water, but it has no beginning and no end. It's a sphere. And a sphere is something which is finite in area, but has no beginning and no end. And the same happens with space. I recall as a young man just going in the bus to school every morning, I would often try to understand this universe in which we live. We can know it's not infinite. It has to be a finite. It's a very simple mathematical proof I remember doing to show this universe cannot be infinite. So if it's not infinite, what is the edge of the universe like? And you imagine just going a long, long, long way, and you come into a wall, end of universe, no one can go further. Or perhaps it's a razor wire fence erected by the government of the universe. No unauthorized people can go past this point. This is the end of the universe. Of course, it's not satisfactory. How can there be an end point of this universe? And when we started talking about science, this is Einstein's general theory, was it doesn't have to have an end. And in fact, this universe, the truth of the matter, every scientist would agree with this, is this universe has got a limited volume. It's only so big, but it has no beginning and no end. And the simile, which I remember the lecturer telling us, imagine an ant crawling on a soccer ball, or a basketball if you don't know what soccer is. The ant goes round and round and round and round and round the soccer ball and realizes it's a limited area, but it has no beginnings and no ends. It curves around on itself. And that is the same as this universe. It curves around on itself. It has no ends. It has a limited volume with no beginning and no end. And that's how scientists, physicists understand the nature of this universe in which we live. Now, let's take the next step. Time. Time also has limited duration. It doesn't go on forever. But it has no beginning and no end. Just like the football, curved. So, time, limited, but no beginning, no end, no edges. So we no longer need a creator. No longer need a beginning or an end. No more than we need a beginning and an end of space. Because the idea of a beginning or an end of space it's illogical. You can't imagine it. It just makes no sense. Nor does the beginning or end of time. And with that, the problem of creation is solved. There was no creation. There was no beginning. There was no end. No more than there's a beginning or an end of the universe through which we travel. Problem solved. No need for God. Bye-bye.
What about the Big Bang?
The Big Bang was what happened before the Big Bang. There was time before the Big Bang. This is one of the things which many scientists say. The Big Bang was just one event. It was not the beginning because there was other universes before then.
Was it affecting the whole universe or just local?
The universe in which we know, but there's other universes as well. So just like Like in Buddhism, we have reincarnation, even universes reincarnate. And that's actually straight from sort of modern theoretical physics.
And parallel universe?
Sorry?
Parallel universe?
Parallel universe, there can be parallel universes, but it doesn't really make much sense because there's no way we can access them. But sequential universes, one after the other, going round and round. So a lot of times that I call most people these days, like we used to call people flat earthers. Most people today are flat timers. They perceive time as just linear with a beginning and end. Perception will change. And you see time as not flat, but curved. And with that, there's no need for a beginning, no need for an end. No need for a first cause. And that's actually intellectually very satisfying. Solves one of the biggest philosophical and religious problems of humanity.
When the Buddha talked about world systems...
Yeah, without beginning, without end. Yeah.
He meant different...
Oh yeah, different universes and stuff, and also different solar systems, different galaxies. Don't know what to do with not nice feelings that arise when I notice that my partner is checking out other women. He's checking out other women, and just to checking out that there's no woman in this whole retreat who's as beautiful as you. So that's what he's doing. I can read his mind. He's looking, oh, so she's not really nice. She's not very nice. I'm so lucky to have my partner. Don't know what to do with not nice feelings that arise when I notice that my partner is checking out other women. I know that it is an instinct, men always do that, but for me it's very disrespectful unless they do that quietly when their partner will not even be aware about that. Partners are always aware about it. You can't hide it from your partner. It'll always catch you out. So they are not checking out other women because they like them. They were just checking them out to realize how lucky they are to have found you. In other words, don't be so suspicious. And they look at somebody else and you think, oh, they like that girl. Because that's suspicious, that negative mind, seeing the two bad bricks in the world and just doubting your partner's feelings. You know, they may not be, checking out other women. You may totally misunderstand what they're doing that for. You know, they may be just compassion. How do you know what they're thinking? So a lot of times that we misunderstand because we have a negative mind. And there's a little story which, if you haven't heard this before, just to show you how we can misunderstand things. I recall many years ago, there was a whole lot of, especially Thai monks, found with mistresses. They were messing around, senior monks, and people like Yantra and stuff. And so I thought, because I'm a good monk, I thought it's about time to be honest and make a confession. So in Nolamara one evening, Friday night, I screwed up my courage and looked in the microphone. I actually had my head down because that's what you usually do when you're ashamed. And I said to everybody, it's about time I confessed. I said that some years previously, I had spent some of the happiest moments of my life in the loving arms of another man's wife. We kissed, we loved each other deeply, and she was another man's wife. And sometimes some people, they put that, I could hear them drawing near. And a couple of people went for the door, they had enough. And seriously, oh no, not Ajahn Brahm too. Is there not no one we can trust? And when people were shocked, that, they said, it was adultery, it's another man's wife, and I was kissing her. And then I told her, that was my mother. It was my father's wife. I spent some of the happiest hours of my life in the arms of another man's wife. It was my mum, my dad's wife. And as soon as I said that, I wasn't doing this to sort of trick them, I was just showing them just how easy it is to misunderstand. Because the way I said that, it sounds like, you've been committing adultery with someone. So many years ago, before I became a monk. So, it was quite innocent, but the way I put it was to try and give the worst possible inferences, and afterwards to show it wasn't true. So often that's the case. So give your partner the benefit of the doubt, always. And don't be so suspicious, otherwise life is not really worth living. So if you're suspicious of everybody, so give them the benefit of the doubt. I try to let these feelings go, but every time when I see my partner turns his head around and checking another woman, I feel terrible after that. Not sure if it's a good idea to talk about that with my partner. I will refuse it and tell me that it's all about my insecurity. There are so many beautiful people around that take our attention. I appreciate their beauty too, but I don't look on them as a sexual object. He probably doesn't either. So how many times do you go shopping? Yeah, you look at a dress. How many of those dresses you look at, you buy? Very few. So it's just the same. The guy looks at a woman, he doesn't buy it. So you're pretty safe. Leave him alone, poor guy. Dear Venerable, I read that if a monk disrobes, he can come back to being a monk 7 times before he can't come back again. But a nun can only disrobe once, and she can't be a nun again. Is this true? If so, why is the nun treated with less tolerance? Thank you. This was a tradition. It wasn't actually a rule. So all what happened, there was a monk, or a person became a monk, and as soon as he became a monk, he missed his wife. So after a few weeks, he disrobed and went back to his wife. And when he went back to his wife, he said, what did I give up being a monk for this? So he went back to being a monk again. But as soon as he went back to become a monk, he missed his wife again. So he disrobed again. He did this 6 times.